Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, 12:30, Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream. Let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me, and let's see if there are any queries so far. All right, no messages in our chat. If you are with us, please let me know if you can see us and if you can hear us. I am on the road, so interested in knowing if you can see me and hear if connection is good enough. Aaron, hi Aaron, good to see you over here. Aaron says hi. Let me know, Aaron, how does it work so far? Can you see me? Can you hear me? Hello, Matthew. Good to see you. Welcome to the live stream. All right, I'm gonna assume things are working fine. If there are any issues, you let me know. And we're just getting started. Okay, so a couple of updates. As you probably know, now we have the e-visa. The e-visa is intended just for some nationals, right? Like this is a repetitive question we hear at the office. Aaron is confirming everything working fine. Thank you, Aaron. So common question, right? Like, I mean, I'm German, or I am French, I'm Italian, I'm from Mexico. Can I use the e-visa, I don't know, like for extend my stay, or to get something that I don't have, or for some nationalities, like, for someone from India or Pakistan, or other countries for which you're gonna need a visa to enter Brazil. The e-visa is actually not meant as a general visa, right? This is a specific visa for some nationalities, such as U.S. citizens, Canadians, and Australians. Okay, so before you jump ahead and try to pursue the e-visa, that's a heads up for you. Of course, in the process of applying for the e-visa, they are going to ask your nationality, and if you are not a national of one of these countries, you're not going to be allowed to proceed. But that's a piece of information that I think it is useful. All right, we have here participation from Ken. Welcome to the live stream, Ken. Ken is asking, what about the requirement to show the ability to transfer money to a Brazilian bank? It seems that they want a proof of disability for a U.S. bank. How do you do this? Ken, there are, actually 2 or 3 different strategies we use here at the office. One strategy is to have you paying into our Brazilian account, right? So if you are hiring our service, and this question is traditionally for people applying for the retirement visa or the retirement residency. If you are applying in the U.S., you're going to be applying through a consulate, and you're going to be getting the retirement visa. If you are applying while physically in Brazil, you cannot get a visa because visas are not issued in the country. Instead, you're going to get a residency, right? So that's probably the purpose of Ken's question. And the way it's going to work, it's like this. If you send money, if you pay for our service in Brazil, guess what? You can use the paperwork for this transfer to show to the Brazilian immigration that, yes, you are capable of sending money to Brazil. So this is a strategy. The main strategy we use is pretty bulletproof. Like, as long as you have this paperwork, they're going to understand, all right, like he already sent money to Brazil. This is enough proof. Second approach is going to be getting a letter from the bank stating that you have wire transfer capability in your bank account to send funds to Brazil. That's strategy number two. If you have a relationship with a manager in your branch, most of the time they're going to be fine with it. Sometimes, for some reason, they say, well, I cannot write this letter. This is not in, I don't know, like our guidelines. I cannot just write any letters, and therefore I'm not going to be able to provide. And if that's the case, we usually compile a document putting together the information about your bank account in the US and some information from the bank about the wire transfer capabilities for their bank accounts, right? Like, so we kind of assemble a new document by combining different things that are going to hopefully convey to the Brazilian immigration that yes, you are able to send the money to Brazil. But these are our strategies in order of priority. Okay, if you send a wire to Brazil, it does show that you have the capability of sending funds to Brazil, transfer money. Now, another variation, or maybe a heads up or warning, they want to see something traditional, right? Like a bank to bank. They don't want to hear about Wise, right? Transfer Wise. They don't want to hear about PayPal. Of course, they know about that, right? Like if they were expecting you to say something about Wise, PayPal, you name it, right? Like they wouldn't have this requirement in the first place because pretty much everybody knows about those apps, and everybody knows that those apps can send money to Brazil. That's not what they are asking. They are asking, listen, I wanna know that you have the capability of wiring funds to Brazil through a formal bank system. Okay, that's another heads up. Very common for people. Yes, I have Wise, right? Like, I mean, that's not compliant. Now, another interesting sharing is that there is some level of discretion in terms of the officer who's going to be reviewing the paperwork. And sometimes we say how things work, and then someone is going to say, well, you said A, but then B happened, right? And this is pretty common, right? Like we're going to tell you how things work for the majority of the cases, but there is a substantial level of discretion. So many times, whatever we're telling you, how it works is not going to be your particular experience. So maybe you're going to show something about Wise, and that particular officer, they don't know that there is a preference from the Brazilian immigration system to use like traditional banking system, and they're going to say, yeah, I mean, I see you sent money to Wise, and that's just fine, okay? But I can tell you there is like a kind of guideline for most of those things, and sometimes you have new officers, particularly at the consulate level. When you are applying for some type of immigration benefit while in Brazil, pretty much every single application is going to be processed in the same branch, in the same agency in Brazil. So they are pretty consistent, or they are more consistent than you would see in consulates, right? Like, so in the United States, you have a bunch of Brazilian consulates, right? Like just in California alone, you have a couple. And to follow the U.S., you have a couple of dozens, right? And there are variations across consulates. So the way that Houston consulate is going to process an application is not going to be the same way that consulate in either San Francisco or Los Angeles is going to process. And believe it or not, within the same consulate, you are also going to see variation. So that's a downside, in my opinion, because it's difficult, right? Like sometimes it's convenient for the person to apply to a consulate. They say, well, I'm going to be, saving big bucks here by not using a lawyer. But on the other side, like there are sometimes, unexpected interpretations from a particular consular officer, if you will. All right, Moses, nice to see you today. Good to see you, Moses. Moses is always around supporting our channel, Churing Mitchell, good day to everyone. Good day, Churing. Good to see you again. Aaron Lopez, hi Luciano. It would be good to understand more about student visas. If someone wants to study Brazilian Portuguese, what comes with it? Are the students allowed to work in Brazil? Aaron, I had a conversation not about the student visa, but about residencies in general with a person who works in the federal police in Rio de Janeiro at the Galeão, right? Like, I mean, not sure if you know, but in Brazil, like immigration, like particularly when you're interacting with the immigration, like in person, is always going to be with the Brazilian Federal Police, which is kind of weird, particularly if you think about the United States, right? Like, I mean, immigration is not immediately associated with police. Of course, there is ICE, but whenever you go to an immigration center, like you're not interacting with police officers. And that's exactly how it works in Brazil. In Brazil, you interact with police officers, right? So yesterday, I was having this conversation with this high-level police officer in the Brazilian Federal Police. He specializes in immigration and customs and stuff. And I was asking, listen, about the possibility of working, right? Like there is no real source of information in the Brazilian legal framework, right? Whenever you're gonna read a specific regulation about the digital nomad, maybe it's an exception. That's the only one that says that you cannot work in Brazil. But if we are talking about the student route, Aaron, if we're talking about the retirement route, if we're talking about a bunch of other tracks for immigration, you don't see anything about labor, right? You don't see anything about a right to work in Brazil. And, this officer yesterday, he told me the same thing that I keep hearing, or that I hear over and over and over, which is, listen, Brazil is not really attached. Brazil is not really concerned if the immigrant is going to work or not. And the general understanding is that unless you can find somewhere that the person is not allowed to work, this person is going to be able to work, right? So that's kind of the best answer, Aaron, that I can give you. But it doesn't make me comfortable about the answer, right? But that's the same answer I hear over and over from the Brazilian government, right? Like, listen, if there is no prohibition, just go work and be happy, okay? So that's pretty much it, Aaron. I would say if you have a student visa, as long as you are working by yourself or you have someone willing to hire you, you're not gonna have a problem, Aaron. All right. Now, student visa, maybe just a few points of information. You can apply through a consulate. So if you are in the U.S., there is always a route for you to apply through a consulate. Another route is for you to apply while you're in Brazil. And you already know, like if you've been here for a while, if you are in Brazil, you're not applying for a student visa, right? You're going to be applying for a student residency, right? That's the technical distinction that we have in the Brazilian framework. You apply abroad through a consulate, always a visa. If you are applying while you're in Brazil, always a residency, okay? So there you go, Aaron. There are those two paths. Something I don't like, Aaron, about the student route is that you're going to be studying. There is a minimum of, I'm not sure if it is 4 or 6 hours a day. But listen, that's a high commitment, right? Like, I mean, if you are actually working, if you have your own business, if you are also a digital nomad, you're gonna be stuck with this study load. And if you don't actually show up for the classes, guess what? They are gonna cancel your enrollment, and in theory, you're gonna lose the student, visa or residency. All right, Aaron. So that's why I don't like it. Most people, they have, their work, they have their activities. Now, if you are an exception, like some people, they are, retirees, or they are in a sabbatical, like meaning that they don't need to work for the next year or so. So if you can accommodate like 4 or 6 hours of study per day, it does sound like a good strategy, actually. All right, Aaron, Ken, is it possible to get a Brazilian private health insurance if you are 73? And do you have an idea about the price? I'm just looking for a rough idea of the cost. Ken, so yes, you can have a private health insurance. Now, if you are trying to apply for, again, I can tell by the questions, right? If you are trying to apply to the Brazil retirement visa, there is a major problem. And I have a video about that. I have an article in our website. You may want to search about it. Whenever you are a foreign citizen, you don't have a residency in Brazil yet, you are unable to, get the same health insurance that I have, right? I have, as a Brazilian, a pretty good health insurance. I pay on a monthly basis. I pay a really, low amount, particularly when you compare to the United States standards. And I can use my health insurance pretty much, everywhere, right? Now, if you are in the process of applying for a visa, you don't have the resident card, and if you try to buy the same insurance that I have, they're going to look at you and say, well, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to sell health insurance to, a foreign citizen. Doesn't make sense, right? They're not going to even engage in a conversation with you for starts, right? So what you're going to be able to find, unfortunately, it's what I call for gringo health insurance. These health insurances, they are provided by very specific providers, and they are going to accept you as a buyer of insurance, but they're going to charge you big bucks, right? And this health insurance, guess what, is not accepted in Brazil because it's not a major insurer. Is almost like something that they created just for the sake of selling to people in your position, right? So for those providers, 1 year of health insurance, which is going to be something that the Brazilian consulate would probably want to see, you could easily pay something between $5,000 to $7,000, right? And for your age bracket. And the problem is not just the amount. The problem is that once you buy this thing, again, if you try to use in Brazil, nobody is going to accept. So you're going to need to pay everything out of pocket, and then later on you're going to need to chase the company that sold you the insurance for you to get reimbursement, right? So usually our strategy is going to be something like this, Ken. If you have, health insurance with international coverage, which is the case, for instance, for pretty much everybody from the U.S. military, right? Like whenever you are in the U.S. military, they have health insurance with global coverage. You are in a great position to apply through a consulate, because you're not going to need to bother, you're not going to need to worry about the health insurance. Now, if that's not the case, usually the answer is going to be applying while physically in Brazil. And if you're going to follow that route, my recommendation is that you first hire a service like ours, because you want to handle a bunch of documents such as the FBI background check naturally before you leave the United States, right? So our work starts before you leave the country, and we complete the work after you are in Brazil. It's usually a long journey. It could be easily like 6 months of joint work, okay? But this is my take on the health insurance, Ken. All right, let's see what else we have over here. Aaron, that helps. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, Aaron. Always good to see you over here. I wanted to ask you something like, sometimes as I am a content producer on YouTube, I also keep an eye at other types of content. And there is a lot of content about about there are two types of content that I see more often, like in these last couple of weeks. One is talking about a potential a gap in terms of products reaching the United States. Like there are some I don't know if they are like doomers, right? Like doom type of content, but they say, well, like in some cities, you start to see shelves like half empty, and that's probably because of disruption in international trade, right? Like, so this is one of the takes I see, kind of saying, like it's almost like this is the side that is against the current federal administration. And then there is another side, right, which is equally, you can equally see that is kind of polarized. So this one is saying, you see, like this whole policy is just creating chaos. Like you're not going to have products, everything is going to get crazily expensive. That's one type of content I see very often, like in the last couple of weeks. The other side, very interesting, is kind of, focusing on China, right? And they're saying, listen, it's about to become, apocalypse for China, because now they don't have, like everybody's canceling their orders from the United States. And naturally, I think United States would count for 30% of the demand of, production in China. So, it's like this is causing a huge problem to China. And you see, like they show images of factories like empty, factories, like dismissing employees, right? And they are kind of, the underlying message is that, yes, I mean that, like there is going to be a pain in the short term, but eventually, like all of this kind of demand or production is going to occur in the United States, right? So it looks like almost like something polarizing, but I see this type of content a lot. I wanted to hear your take on it, right? Like, I mean, you are in the United States, and you probably can tell from experience what you think it's going on, and what is your expectation for the long term. And I'm going to explain why I'm asking this question to you guys. Naturally, because our firm really specializes, right, in foreign clients. Most of our clients are from the United States. I want to, I want to understand the mindset of the U.S. Population right now. Like, I mean, are you guys going to stop buying stuff? Are you guys going to stop like planning, for the future? Are you going to stop buying real estate? So that's my, interest in this type of information. Please feel free to share. And naturally, they're just like different points of view, and we do respect everyone as usual. In the meantime, let me see what else we have here in the chat. Boa tarde. I'm permanently leaving Brazil now for 1 year using my R&M. So I apply for the Brazilian citizenship and passport with the background check and police report. So if I apply for the Brazil citizenship and passport, will the background check and police report be done in Brazil or the UK? Mark, traditionally, right, I'm not going to be talking about citizenship because the information is going to cover actually, pretty much everyone who's living in Brazil. So that could be the digital nomad, that could be the retirement, that could be like a student route. Whenever you're living in Brazil, right, most of the time you're going to present a background check from Brazil, okay? A background check from Brazil, because you've been living in Brazil. Now, when you apply for citizenship, right, maybe the distinction here is that because of, how important such benefits is going to be, most probably than not, the officer would expect a background check from, your country of origin as well, all right? So I cannot tell you, Mark, if the officer would let you apply with just the Brazilian background check, But I would recommend you to have both. Like, you're gonna need the Brazilian one, of course, because you've been living in Brazil. But just because citizenship is such a high achievement, right, or a high, ask, if you will, I think you should have both. Okay. Um, if we're in the UK, right? If you was in the United States, we do help with the FBI background check. We actually have the FBI fingerprint cards at the office, both in São Paulo and in Rio de Janeiro. And clients, they come over, to have their fingerprinting taken. But in the UK, then it's a different process. But Mark, I would recommend both. Okay. Aaron, I hear that with the e-visa, U.S. citizens have to show proof of a return flight. However, if someone wants to apply for the digital nomad visa in Brazil, do they still have to show a proof of return? That's a good question, Aaron. I don't think so. I don't think so in Brazil, right? And some of these questions I do discuss with our team. Others, like for some reason, I never discussed it. That's one of them. I never discussed about the return flight. But I think, if you are applying for a digital nomad, the idea here is that you're not returning anytime soon, right? So if I had it to guess, I would guess that you don't need a return flight. Okay. Now, that would be most probably in Brazil, usually at a consulate. I don't know, just by experience, they usually like to see a return ticket. Okay, so that would be just a guess, Aaron. But those things, listen, if you happen to hire our services in the future, then of course we give you every single piece of information that you need to have a fully compliant application. Ken, I was asking about the cost of private health insurance after I get my residency. All right, that's great. Good for you, Ken. I plan to apply for my retirement visa while in Brazil, so I'm asking about prices for a regular private insurance. Yes, Ken, there is a pretty famous health insurance provider for seniors in Brazil. I think it's Prevent Senior, like the name. And they do provide, like reasonable cost plans. Like if you are in your 70s, I'm gonna guess, right? I'm gonna guess something in the range of $300,000 a month for a quality health insurance. Okay. Now they do screen for like pre-existing kind of like diseases. And, that's just natural, right? Like, I mean, once you are entering the health system at that age, like there is some level of, screening that you're going to go through. But the good news is that, yes, there are plans out there. And I would recommend you to, join one, of course. So you would have access to private, to the private health system. As you probably also know, there is access, once you have your resident card, you can also use the public health system. You are welcome to use, for many things, the public health system, it's reasonable. It's usually, like overwhelmed, like, and if you need something really special, like you may need to wait for several months, which of course is far from ideal, okay? But $300, Ken, it's like just a ballpark estimate. All right. Moses, your office always demand for a consultation fee. Whenever I email you for investment visa application, I have invested through the help of an attorney. I followed all procedures. I currently have the exchange contract signed by Itaú Bank. I have the authorization document to build for the construction company. All right, Moses, I'm not sure if there's going to be a question, or maybe you're going to complete the question. Yes, the consultation fee in Brazil is actually mandatory, Moses, from the Brazilian Bar Association, and we charge $125, right? And that's a fraction of our cost for that consultation. Okay, so if the consultation sounds, like something, that's not fair, then you are certainly not the type of client that we serve, and that's fine, right? Just like you said, you are using a different attorney, and that's absolutely fine. That's understandable. There are different attorneys at different law firms and different clients, and you just need to find the right match. No hard feelings, and you are welcome to continue coming to our live stream and enjoying the knowledge we share over here, Moses. George Fournette, hello, I'm planning to move down there after retiring in January. I'm applying for a family reunification visa. Who can we talk to about what we can bring with us? Furniture, car, computer. George, my recommendation is that you contact like a broker, a customs broker. Okay, a customs broker is going to be the ideal source of information for this particular question. If you have the resident card, usually you are able to bring items that are typical of a household, and you're gonna need to hire a customs broker in addition to a transportation company. So usually you hire two companies to assist you with that piece of your journey. One is gonna be a transportation company, and another one it's gonna be a customs broker, right? The transportation company is the one who's going to provide you with the container, who's going to book a slot in a ship to bring your stuff from abroad. And the customs broker is going to be the company handling all the paperwork, which, for pretty much everything in Brazil, is going to be a bunch of papers, right? So you're going to need those two, George. I don't have one from the top of my head, but for all the clients who hire our services, yes, we have like a list of trusted shipping companies and customs brokers as well. Christopher, boa tarde, senhor Luciano. Boa tarde, Christopher. I haven't yet selected the property that I want to purchase, but wondered when is the right time to engage your team for an initial consultation. Christopher, I think if you are, in this journey of buying properties, the sooner you have like a consultation, the sooner you're gonna be able to understand the dynamics of buying a property in Brazil. Okay, so most people, they do have this consultation at the early stage of their journey toward property ownership in Brazil, and then they hire our services when they are starting the shopping process, right? When you have our service and you're doing the shopping stage, like we're gonna review the paperwork for the properties, make sure that you're buying a sound property with a good title, and not only that, particularly if you're buying a property in a good location, in a good neighborhood. In our real estate service, we have about 300 activities, and just on the currency exchange alone, we can typically save you like for most transactions, I would say we save our clients at least 2% in currency exchange rates. Okay, that's something else that people don't usually know. Whenever you are sending money to Brazil, there is like a percentage of the money that the Brazilian bank is going to retain as compensation for the crazily extensive compliance process that they are going to handle on your behalf, and this is going to be paid by someone, and this someone is going to be you, right? So some banks, they charge up to 4% of the so-called spread, right? Very, like sometimes we see banks charging 5%, meaning that for every $100 you send into Brazil, bank is retaining $5, right? Sometimes $4, sometimes $3. And whenever you work with us, like we're gonna have a currency exchange partners who are gonna limit this spread. Like we have like a contract with the currency exchange partner bank, limiting how much they are gonna be keeping from your money, right? So just right there, you usually save like a couple of percentage points, right? So this on top of the, about 300 steps or 300 activities we have during the course of our service, it is extremely helpful, to the clients who use our service. Okay, so that's something we usually discuss on the onboarding, consultation. And many clients, they have multiple consultations, by the way, right? Like, I mean, sometimes, people have one consultation and then they hire our services, a couple of weeks later. Other clients, they have a longer turnaround to get to the point in which they are ready to proceed. So they, have one consultation now, another consultation a couple of months down the line, and they have multiple consultations, right? We make the consultation affordable exactly as a way for you guys to use as much as you want. It's $125, right, for 40 minutes. And I have colleagues of mine, right, like who are younger, who know, much less than I do, and they charge $600 an hour in California, right? And we charge $125 for 40 minutes. So, like I was sharing, right? Like it really depends on the type of client you are and on the type of resource you are looking for. But $125, it should not be anything meaningful to you. If it is meaningful to you, we are not the right provider, and that's fine, right? That's absolutely fine. You're still welcome to participate in our live streams. All right. George Fournette, finally, someone is going to chime in. Also, for consumer mood in the US, uncertain. At first, everyone was making large purchases before prices went up. No, people are waiting, afraid of price increases and a recession in the US. George, thank you for sharing. That's kind of the feeling we are getting. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm just like, I just see this type of content repetitive on YouTube, right? And sometimes through the content that people are putting out there, you kind of understand how the market, how people, right, are interpreting this moment. Okay, yes. Now people are waiting, afraid of price increases and a recession in the U.S. Yes, and to be honest with you, George, we did have a reduction in like clients starting their journey to buy property in Brazil, either just like for enjoying during their vacation time, or as a ticket to permanent residency, right? So we did experience, like in this last couple of weeks, like a reduction in clients for that particular route. Interesting to note that on the other hand, like digital nomads, it's always increasing. I don't know if it is, just by word of mouth, or because, nowadays people are just mobile, right? Like they can work from different places. But a digital nomad is something that, there is never a shortage of people joining the digital nomad, train. And retirement, typically we have so many clients from the U.S. military, and we're very proud of it. I assume, like when you get a retirement in the range of $5,000 a month, and if you live in a big city in the United States, it's not easy, to get by. And with $5,000 a month, and to be honest with you, maybe with $4,000 a month, maybe with $3,000 a month, right? Depending on where you are in Brazil, you can live a pretty comfortable life, okay, with $3,000. If you live like in the northeast of Brazil, not Rio, not São Paulo, not Florianópolis, right? But in the northeast of Brazil, with $3,000, you're gonna live a very comfortable life, particularly if you know how to take care of your money, right? You're gonna be really enjoying Brazil. And again, with $5,000, right? Like, I mean, you cannot even think about living in New York City, right? Any of the boroughs, California, we're not gonna even start there, right? Like with $5,000, like for most cities, $5,000 are usually how much you're gonna be paying in rent, right? Like, I mean, if you are in those main cities like San Francisco, Santa Clara, Silicon Valley, Mountain View, I don't know, like a major area in Los Angeles, rents are crazily expensive. Okay, so there you go. São Paulo, Brazil remains a pretty interesting place for people to do the so-called, geo arbitrage. Have you heard about this concept? Geo arbitrage, meaning that you are paid in one place and you're going to spend your money in a different place, and that's a way for you to maximize your purchase power, right? Like you make money in the United States, you are paid in California, you're paid in New York, or pretty much any state, right? It doesn't need to be one of those expensive states. It could be Texas, it could be Florida, it could be Nevada, you name it. You get your money over there and you spend in Brazil. This is geo arbitrage, meaning that you are, picking different places to make your money and to spend your money. You make money in a place in which prices are very expensive, and you spend your money in a place in which prices are not crazily expensive. All right. Moses, I want to apply for investment visa through your firm because the lawyer I used for the process does not seem serious in terms of investment visa. Can I contact you? Of course, Moses. Doors are always open. Just come over, schedule a consultation. We're gonna be happy to get you started. All right, Moses, you're very welcome. And that's that's an interesting comment, Moses, because yes, unfortunately, you're gonna see in Brazil, professionals who are gonna be charging. Sometimes they don't even charge for a consultation, which, in my opinion, is first a red flag because they are doing something against the bar association that says that no lawyer in Brazil can provide free consultations. That's the first red flag, and then they charge you something that's not going to allow them to provide you the type of work that you expect. So that's an interesting point, Moses. Since all I need to do is for you to process my application, do I need to pay for construction? I don't get it, Moses. Construction, I'm not sure what you mean by that. But yes, the best approach is to, contact our team and schedule a consultation, right? The consultation is pretty, like I said, it's pretty affordable, and we need to review your situation to even make sure that we are able to help you. All right, Moses. We have all types of people, all types of clients. We cannot work with everyone, right? So the consultation has this purpose of sharing as much information with you as possible. So yes, you do take a good amount of knowledge out of those consultations. And we also assess during that interaction if we are the right provider for your needs, right? And professional services, such legal services, they are not like an asset or a good that you go to a store and you buy it. It's something customized, right? Something that is based on human, a relation, and it's important to see that what you're looking for is what we provide, and that we are a good match for you as a provider, and vice versa, that you are a good match for us as a client as well, Moses. I hope that makes sense. George, thanks. We are anticipating the dollar being weaker for years to come. So now we are looking at real estate investment to augment my pension. This is how I found your channel. Very interesting, George. Yes, I hear. I hear. Yes. I hope you find a legal firm for long-term support in the Florianopolis area. Yes, George, that's very interesting. Like, I mean, we have offices as of today. We have offices in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. We are launching an office in Brasilia, and the reason for Brasilia, for you guys to understand why Brasilia, as some of you may know, is the capital of Brazil. But that's where we have most of the embassies, okay? In the United States, for instance, you have embassies in different places, right? It could be in New York, but it could also be elsewhere. In Brazil, traditionally, an embassy is going to be based in Brasilia, right? I think in the US it's also natural for embassies to be in Washington, D.C., I would guess, and then consulates should be elsewhere. But in Brazil, it's like you have a specific area in Brasilia, a neighborhood in which you have all the embassies, right? And for many of our cases, we end up contacting like embassies. Sometimes you need to send someone over there. Brasilia has also a large number of foreign citizens naturally because they are going to be working in the embassies. Sometimes they are going to be coming, to discuss, public policy with the government. So that's where we are setting up an office that is literally 5 minutes, a 5-minute drive from the U.S. Embassy, okay? Very similar to our arrangement in Rio de Janeiro. In Rio de Janeiro, our office is in Rio de Janeiro downtown, a 5-minute drive from the U.S. consulate. Also interesting to note, even though São Paulo is much bigger than Rio de Janeiro, and also more important, if you will, from a political perspective, from a GDP point of view, the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro is the main one, okay, and they handle some of the like green card applications, right, for Brazilians who are going to live in the U.S. All these green card applications, they are going to be handled exclusively by the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro, okay? So going back, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, now Brasilia, our fourth city to be targeted is going to be Florianopolis, right, George? So we don't have right now a physical presence, even though we always have some a real estate transaction happening in Florianopolis. I'm sure you heard about Camboriú, right? There are many other cities in Santa Catarina that are, of interest to foreign citizens. So that's why we're going to be in Florianopolis soon. Moses, since all I need for you is process my application, do I need to pay for consultation? Yes, Moses. We listen. We don't know if you have the paperwork to file the application, right? This is not our firm, Moses. We don't just handle or shuffle paperwork, right? We need to understand what you have. So in this consultation, we would review what you have in terms of properties. We could take a look at the title. We can talk about you, right, as an applicant, because there are requirements both on the property, on the applicant, on how you sent the money. So we don't even know if we can assist you or not, Moses, right? Like, I mean, you may think you have everything or, but not rarely people who go out there and do things by themselves, not surprisingly, they come with less than ideal like paperwork, and not only paperwork, more importantly, the things that they done, right? And if that's the case, then we cannot help you, right? So the consultation is exactly to know if we can help you or not. Like, I mean, we're not going to review your paperwork just because you sent over, right? We need at least some time to do this review together and first see if we can help you or not. All right, Moses, I hope that makes sense. Aaron, Moses, definitely schedule a consult with Luciano. I have had several times and it's always worth it. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Thank you for your support. Thank you indeed. All right, so we are in the final minutes of today's live stream. We still have time for more, for probably a couple of questions. So, type that question, type that comment. I'm interested in knowing, what you think about the future. What your plans for Brazil are. If you see turmoil in the international markets, okay, let me know your opinion. Let me know your opinion over here. And all right, let me see if we have anything else over here in our backlog. Yeah, this one, it's a question from the backlog. I'm not sure if it would be of interest to you guys, but this person was saying like they're in a different time zone. They cannot attend our live streams, but they are always watching the recordings, right? So their question is about citizenship, right? Citizenship. They say they have a birth certificate. I have a Brazilian birth certificate, but there is information in the footer saying that I should confirm my Brazilian citizenship after adulthood, right? Meaning that once you become an adult, you need to confirm. So over the past several decades, there were several changes in how Brazil is going to grant citizenship for those born abroad to a Brazilian parent, right? So this is very typical in the United States. There was a Brazilian, the Brazilian, immigrated to the United States. Now they marry with a U.S. citizen. They have a child in the U.S. Naturally, the child is going to be a U.S. citizen, at least up to now, right? And so nowadays, the only thing you need to do is to take the birth certificate of this child born in the United States. You, as the Brazilian parent, you're going to record the U.S. birth certificate at a Brazilian consulate. That's the first step. After you do that, you're going to take the U.S. birth certificate plus the recording at the consulate level, and you're going to do a second recording, right? The first one was the original birth certificate. First recording was at the consulate level. Second recording is in Brazil. Once you do this final recording in Brazil, this child is going to be a Brazilian for good, right? They don't need to do anything else. Like 30 years down the line, they are Brazilians forever, unless they renounce the citizenship, right? Now, in the past, the person would be required to confirm the citizenship when becoming an adult. So they have the potential Brazilian citizenship. They even have the Brazilian birth certificate, which by the way, it's how we assess citizenship. It's not like by passport; it's actually by birth certificate in Brazil. So they do have a Brazilian birth certificate in a sense that it was recorded in Brazil after they were born in the United States. However, there is this language because of prior interpretation of the law that they need to confirm the citizenship. And the way to confirm the citizenship is for you to first, you gotta be living in Brazil. So you cannot confirm your citizenship if you are in the United States, okay? You gotta, come to Brazil. Maybe you have a plan to live in Brazil for 6 months, for 1 year. So that's the first requirement. You gotta be living in Brazil. Second requirement is for you to file, believe it or not, you're gonna need to file a request to a federal judge to confirm your citizenship, because that's the language we have in the regulations, and there is even similar language in our Brazilian constitution. By the way, it's Article 12. If you take a look at Article 12, that's the article that talks about citizenship, and there is going to be one specific paragraph within, actually one specific paragraph within Article 12 that is going to address the confirmation by a federal judge. Okay, so whenever people come to us, what we do, we're going to file this suit with a federal court, basically saying, John Smith, he was born to Brazilian parents, and now he's living in Brazil. He wants to confirm his citizenship, and then we're going to attach a bunch of papers, And most of the time, the judge is going to schedule a hearing just for you to say, yes, I want to confirm. It sounds silly, right? But that's how it works. You're going to say, yes, I want to confirm my Brazilian citizenship. I have all the paperwork. I'm living in Brazil. And there you go. That's going to be it. Usually after the hearing, the judge is going to adjudicate. And this is going to be published in the Brazilian Gazette, known as Diário Oficial da União, which is a kind of official newspaper for the federal government. They are going to give notice that you have confirmed your choice for the Brazilian citizenship, and that publishing alone is going to allow you to update your birth certificate in Brazil, to remove the language restricting your citizenship. And after that point, you're going to be able to get other documents, such as not only the Brazilian tax ID, which, by the way, it's available even to non-Brazilians, but you're also going to be able to apply for the voting card, for the Brazilian ID known as RG, right? And then finally, you're going to be able to get the Brazilian passport. All right. So there was a question in the backlog. Thank you guys for entertaining the answer. Let's see. We have something else. Aaron Lopez, what's safe in your opinion? João Pessoa, Florianópolis. Any big difference between the cities? Yes, Aaron, they are substantially different, right? They couldn't be more different, right? João Pessoa is in the northeast of Brazil, is much more laid back, is a city that is more like a developing city, right? Or underdeveloped, right? If we don't sugarcoat. So the northeast is less developed substantially than the south. Florianópolis is exactly the opposite. It's like one of the most developed cities or areas in the country, right? So very different cities for you to pick. Florianópolis is much safer, no question about. Florianópolis is an island, right? So just because it's an island alone, like this is usually going to make it more difficult for people with bad intentions to do bad stuff, because if they do it, it's difficult for them to leave the island, right? And that alone is going to help with the safety side of things. But that's not only that. The south of Brazil, traditionally, it's better developed than the remaining of the country. All right, Aaron? So if safety and development is high in your list, Florianópolis, no questions asked. If you want to have a more laid-back type of place, João Pessoa is going to be a better choice. João Pessoa, whenever you pick the Northeast, you can also get things you're not going to get in Florianópolis. Usually in Florianópolis, it's difficult for you to buy beachfront properties just because, the city is well developed. There are several hundreds of thousands of people in the area, right? So very difficult for you to buy a beachfront property. João Pessoa and the Northeast is the exact opposite, right? There is still a lot of virgin coastline that you can go and buy a beachfront property for a very reasonable amount. So you see, Aaron, different areas for different purposes, but very interesting question, Aaron. Thank you for asking. Last one for today. Clayton Rodriguez, theoretically, would every generation receive dual citizenship like grandchildren and great-grandchildren? Clayton, so the citizenship is going to flow from a parent to a child, okay? So just making sure I understand your take on it. There is a step that you need to take, which is to record the birth certificate. All right. So just because you were born to a Brazilian parent in the United States, for instance, that doesn't mean you're going to be a Brazilian. Your parent needs to do the recording, or if they don't do, you can do later on when you are an adult. But there is like an active step that you need to take in order for you to unlock the Brazilian citizenship, if you will. Okay. Now, there is no limit, right? Like, I mean, once you get the Brazilian citizenship, you can also pass on the Brazilian citizenship to the next generation and so on. Okay, I know that for Portugal, maybe that's the reason for your question, Clayton. Like in Portugal, there is like the possibility of acquiring citizenship through a grandfather, right? But there are limits. Like if the grandfather was not living in Portugal, there is a bunch of secondary rules that you need to investigate to see if you're gonna qualify or not. In Brazil, it's always from the parent to the child, meaning that, let's say, if your a grandparent has died, but your parent is still alive, your parent could go do their recording, and once they unlock their Brazilian citizenship, then you can also, by turn, go and secure your citizenship as well. And with that said, we're going to end today's live stream. I want to say thank you to all of you who participated. Very interesting questions, very active chat. And I hope to see you in our next live stream. And you guys have a blessed rest of your Wednesday.